name is Nora-Louise Müller. I live in Lübeck in North Germany, and I'm currently a PhD student at the Hochschule für Musik und Theater in Hamburg. And my research project is about the Bohlen-Pierce scale, the Bohlen-Pierce clarinet that you're going to hear more about in a minute. My income I earn from teaching clarinet, as many students. I'm also a freelance musician. I play a lot of contemporary music. And in this season, I'm training the woodwinds for an ensemble of young professionals in contemporary music. I assume most of you have heard of the Bohlen-Pierce scale already. It has a frame interval of a perfect 12th, that is an octave plus a fifth. So we have to rethink our scale because it's a non-octave scale and it's quite different from what we're used to. We can shorten that by saying it's 13 ED3, 13 steps, the equal division of the interval 3/1, that's the perfect 12th. The step size in the equal tempered version is thus 146.3 cents, so it's right between a half tone and a whole tone. The BP triad consists of odd numbers. It's 3/5/7. So we can say the scale and the triads are stretched compared to 12 ED2, where we have the octave, the 12 steps, and now we have an octave plus a fifth, which is about 1.5 times the interval, and we have 13 steps. So the step size is stretched, and the triad as well, from 4 to 5 to 6, which is the major triad and the main triad in the traditional Western scale. We go to 3 to 5 to 7, and that sounds like this. Triad, and the scale, when I play every chromatic step, sounds like this. In 1971 by Heinz Bohlen, communication electronics and microwaves engineer in Hamburg in Germany. He asked a very naive question: why the octave? Why is the octave the most important, the most consonant interval in Western traditional music? He did a lot of research throughout weeks and months, and he found out that the reason for this is to a big part in our ear, how our ear perceives and processes the information that gets in. To make a long story short, he replaced the interval ratio 2/1 by 3/1, which is an interval almost as consonant as the octave, this one. And under several mathematical considerations, he said that the triad should be 3/5/7 because it's beautiful and consonant. What is always noticeable is that in 1971, Heinz Bohlen was not able to play his scale. It was his brainchild, but it remained a theoretical construction for at least 1.5 years. Because at the time there were, of course, no Bohlen-Pierce instruments. Today we can tune synthesizers or softwares just as easy, and we can hear any scale that we make up within a minute. At that time, synthesizers were out of the financial reach of most private persons. So Heinz Bohlen had to build his own home organ. There was a place in Germany at the time where you could order a kit for a home-built organ. So he called that company and ordered a very strange set of keys and parts. And it came to his house and he spent the summer on the terrace. His children around him looking over his shoulder. I've seen a photo of that, it was cute. And he was assembling that organ. And toward Christmas 1972, it was ready. And for the first time ever, Heinz Bohlen switched on this first Bohlen-Pierce instrument. At that time, it didn't have that name yet. And he began to play it. And as he told me, he was upset when he heard it. He was excited because what he had made up, what he had calculated a long time before, actually did make sense. And it was a consonant scale with consonant harmonies. Compared to the Western traditional scale, we can say that there are a lot of differences between those two scales. And actually, I always feel that consonance and dissonance between the two scales are just turned upside down. The consonant octave in the Western traditional scale is simply stepped over in the Bohlen-Pierce scale due to the different step size. Can you see my arrow? Yeah. The interval that is closest to the octave by means of sense deviation is the Bohlen-Pierce eighth, with a ratio of 49/25. That gives 1,170 cents. So that octave is about 30 cents sharp, and it sounds really disturbing. The second interval that we consider a consonant in the traditional scale is the fifth, which is also Bohlen-Pierce fifth, with this strange ratio, and that's a fifth, that's about 30 cents sharp. On the contrary, intervals that we consider dissonant, at least in the equal division of the octave in 12 steps, are the tritone, which has some considerable beatings, the Bohlen-Pierce fourth, we call it, and it has this ratio 7/5. And from this simple ratio, you can see that it's an interval that's perceived as consonant by our ears. That interval is a lot smaller than the tritone in 12/82, and so it's much softer to our ears and it doesn't have the beatings. And also the Bohlen-Pierce seventh is 9/5, which is almost a natural sept. In 1971, Heinz Bohlen had almost no way of playing his scale or making music with other musicians. The scale was discovered about 10 years later curiously, by a person with just the same profession, an electronic communications and microwave engineer. And that was Max Matthews. It wasn't Max Matthews, it was John Pierce, sorry. But Max Matthews in California was leading research about intonation perception. It must have been in 1983, I think. And he had this 357 chord as an artificial product. He had just made it up as a control chord to the 456 major chord that he was researching about. In his experiment, The just major chord was presented to individuals, as well as a major chord with the third about 15 cents higher. We can say an equal tempered major chord, and the same chord with the third about 15 cents lower. And he was researching about how the individuals would perceive those chords, which one is most consonant to them and which one is most dissonant. And to control this outcome, he took as well this 3-5-7 chord, and he did the same changes to the middle note. And then, about a year later, so he showed this chord to his friend John Robinson Pierce, who was a very well-known scientific at the time. And one can even say he was one of the greatest engineers of the 20th century, because he did a lot of developments in satellite technique, and a lot of what is flying around in space up there is actually still based on John Robinson Pierce's developments. So Pierce and Matthews wondered if there would be a scale to match this chord, and they found out that no division of the octave does really match this chord or makes the chord fit into a scale. And it was just a flash in the brain of John Robinson Pierce that he said, wait a minute, if the chord is stretched, why don't we stretch the scale and the frame interval? And they tried it out, and they came to the same outcome than Heinz Bohlen did about 10 years earlier, just from a very different approach. At the time, of course, there was no internet, so the two men didn't know of each other, and they hadn't met each other. So, whereas Bohlen was calling his scale the 13-tone scale, or simply my scale, John Pierce called the scale immediately the Pierce scale. And it was only in 1987 that Pierce found out that there was some German guy who had done the same discovery years earlier. And the saying goes that he was a little bit crunching his teeth about that, and reluctantly renamed the scale to the Bohlen-Pierce scale. A peculiar irony in this history is that Heinz Bohlen worked in California, and he lived there in the 1990s, and he lived about 6 kilometers away from John Pierce's home. And they had been on the phone with each other about some professional talk about microwave techniques or satellite something, and they didn't know that they had something much more exciting to share. So they ended up that phone call there, bye-bye, and they missed an occasion there. When Bohlen found out that Pierce was living so close to him and had discovered the same scale, he wanted to visit him. But Pierce was considerably older, and he was probably already suffering from dementia, and he couldn't get his visit, and he couldn't talk to him. That's a bit sad. So the scale fell into oblivion for about 30 years because synthesizer technique was not as far. But before that, Heinz Bohlen was in contact in the 1970s with several acousticians about his scale and would ask them what they would think of it. One of them was Julio, a very well-known acoustician at the time. And I think he worked in Braunschweig. And Bohlen had sent him a letter with his paper in it about the scale. And Jürgen Meyer actually answered him to his scale in May 1973. And this text I want to read to you. Jürgen Meyer says, die Voraussetzung für tonale Zusammenklänge ist natürlich die Vermeidung von geradzahligen Obertönen. Mit elektronischen Tongeneratoren lässt sich das ohne weiteres erreichen. Im Bereich des konventionellen Instrumentariums gibt es dagegen wenig Möglichkeiten. Denn bei den Klarinetten sind die entsprechenden Spektren etwa auf die unterste Oktave des Tonumfangs beschränkt und gedackte Orgelpfeifen haben meist schon einen stärkeren vierten Teilton. Man könnte allerdings an entsprechend aufgebaute neue Mixturen denken. In English, a precondition for tonal harmonies is, of course, the avoidance of even-numbered partials. This can be achieved easily using electronic tone generators. Conventional instruments, in contrast, provide few possibilities. Regarding clarinets, the appropriate spectra are confined to the lower octave of the range, and stopped pipes usually have a stronger fourth partial. However, one could think of building appropriate new mixtures. So what Maya is mentioning here is that the spectrum of a sound playing a scale should be somewhat connected to the pitches in that scale. So the spectrum should have uneven partials and skip the even ones, because in the Bohlen-Pierce scale we have only uneven ratios. John Robinson Pierce knew this as well, by the way, because he had done research in the 1960s about consonants in arbitrary scales. And we also heard in one of the lectures, William Severus, in Tuning Tonka Spectrum Scale, explains the same phenomenon in the example of a pseudo-octave. At this early stage, Maya already considers the clarinet as a possible BPT instrument. But unfortunately, he drops his idea because he thinks that the clarinet spectrum is not perfectly matching, not quite good enough. The clarinet spectrum skips the second partial, or it suppresses it such a lot that it cannot be heard, and the clarinet cannot be overblown to the octave, but it overblows to the third partial. The fourth partial is suppressed again, and the next partial to overblow to is the fifth partial. About clarinet and instrument spectra a lot, and he had found out that this characteristic of the much suppressed second partial only is present in the lowest octave of the clarinet. So of course this clarinet doesn't have an octave, but here we have these characteristics, and here as well. But already here, the spectrum starts to change, and the second and fourth partials come in a bit more present. So he dropped his idea, and it took about 30 years for the Bohlen-Pierce scale to come up again. And that was Georg Haidu, nowadays professor for multimedia composition in Hamburg. He had heard as a student about the Bohlen-Pierce scale and was interested in it. He used it in one scene of his opera Der Sprung in 1993. And he also saw that the clarinet would be quite a good instrument to play. At the time, of course, he didn't have a Bohlen-Pierce clarinet, so he used a wind controller, an electronic wind instrument, which he detuned to Bohlen-Pierce, or retuned to Bohlen-Pierce. And he gave that wind controller to the clarinetist who had to play the opera, but the truth is the clarinetist couldn't handle the instrument and he refused to play it. So the truth is that Georg Heidu had to play that part in his opera on a keyboard. He was probably very sad about that, but that's a secret. Georg really wanted a real Bohlen-Pierce clarinet. So he wrote to every clarinet maker that he could find anywhere. He called people and he told about this project. I don't know how about you, but when I first heard about the Bohlen-Pierce scale, I couldn't imagine what it was. And if we cannot imagine what it is, or we cannot handle it, then the idea is refused. Ivan knows it from his quarter-tone marimba. It's refused by the percussionist. Finally, he found Stephen Fox in Toronto, Canada, who is not only a clarinetist, an instrument maker, but also a physicist. So he had a curious mind and he had the knowledge to build this clarinet. And he started making them, and in 2007, the first 2 Bohlen-Pierce clarinets were shipped to Hamburg. Now let's have a look at it. There were some decisions regarding instrument design to be made by Stephen Fox. The first question was the reference pitch. Electronic instruments are often mapped to C, to the middle C. That would have been possible for the clarinet. The other obvious choice was the A of about 440 Hz. And Stephen went with that decision for the reason that it would be easier to play with traditional instruments, for the reason that electronic instruments can be remapped easily, and for the simple practical reason that he could use the normal body of a clarinet to build his instrument. The tube length here is the same as in a normal B-flat clarinet, because the A uses the whole tube length. It's the lowest note of the clarinet overblown one time. And another good thing is that I can use my normal B-flat clarinet mouthpiece. Stephen Fox decided to add keys for the pinky fingers. Followed by 6 open tone holes. And then there is an A key. And there we are, overblowing the lowest pitch. Until we go to the 3rd register. My clarinet has 2 extra keys. I thought it would be fancier, so some years when I was into the project, I ordered my own Bohlen-Pierce clarinet. The first 2 clarinets are owned by Heinz Bohlen and Georg Heidu, they somehow shared. I got 2 extra keys, this one and this one. They should not be there, they are just for fun, for microtones, for multiphonics, for color changes, but they are not needed. This instrument layout is very comfortable for the clarinetist, and Stephen had good reasons to go with this design. And in the beginning of the project, we only had a fingering notation for the clarinets. So I read a notated B and I play the B fingering of my B-flat clarinet and so on. And a D sharp would be like this. It was just that different pitches came out of the instruments. which made me laugh, by the way, when I played it for the very, very first time. So the problem that shows up here is that these two intervals are both a beaky sixth, which you would not think from the notation. Only the clarinetist can guess it, but it makes difficulties. And other instruments, of course, cannot read this notation because it's exclusively for the clarinet. A keyboard player cannot use it. He would use a notation that matches his keyboard layout, which in most cases is just a traditional keyboard layout with a different mapping. So this is the notation of one of the first compositions for 2 BP clarinets and synthesizer, Beyond the Horizon. What you can see in the upper stave is the first clarinet, I cannot show it, in the clarinet fingering notation. The second staff is the translation, the transcription of the first staff into the keyboard notation. And the middle 2 staffs, the same for the second clarinet, the clarinet fingering notation and the keyboard notation. And the lowest 2 staffs are for the keyboard, and they show the keyboard fingering notation. So you can see that rehearsing in an ensemble can be troublesome here. None of these notations represents the sounding pitches, and that can really drive one crazy when rehearsing. So it became clear that we would need a notation that other instruments can read easily. As a clarinetist, I of course thought of myself first and had an idea for a notation that fits my instrument and that I thought would be easy, or at least possible, to read for other players. A chromatic notation with no use of accidentals comes in handy because we don't have the accidental notation in the Western traditional scale is of course due to the keyboard layout, or the other way around, whatever. So in a chromatic notation with 13 steps, we need a slightly bigger staff. My staff has 6 lines. And right in the middle of it, I put the middle A, because it's kind of the middle pitch of my clarinet. The lowest pitch, the sounding D, is then down here, on the 4th ledger line, which is still comfortably readable. And the 12th above on the 4th ledger on the above staff, we have the 12th above middle A. I showed this idea to Georg Heido and explained my reasons to choose this design. And he thought about it for some days and tried it out for himself and said, it's quite a good idea. Now I suggest we need note names. A, B, C, D, E, F, G are already given to another scale, and he said we should not use them because it would be confusing. And he said, what about we just go with the other end of the alphabet? We name the notes N to Z. In this case, the middle A is N4. Georg suggested that because A4 is the chamber note A on the instruments in the American terms. So according to that, this would be N3, and up here, N5. And because N is the middle note of the stave, we can use an N clef. For me, as a clarinetist, this is comfortably readable. I told you this is middle A, so my finger B actually. This note, Q, and Q, I read as a low G or low D regarding my clarinet fingerings. So my eye is cheated in a very interesting way here. And then I have to transpose, if I may call it that, just by one note between those pitches. And I can easily learn that notation. Of course, there are other instruments, lower sounding instruments, that need other clefs because they have other ranges. And we also thought that playing N doesn't look very aesthetic. We wanted something fancier. And so I suggested some current font for the N that looks a little bit more artful. A T clef for instruments in the tenor range, like Bohlen-Pierce, the Bohlen-Pierce guitar, 9-string guitar that Georg Heidu bought. Ron Sword in Boston built it. And a Z clef, let's say for the left hand of the keyboard. Later on I suggested a U clef, which is very similar to the T clef, just for the simple reason that I have another clarinet, a low sounding clarinet, which is 6 steps below this clarinet, and to read comfortably in Bohlen-Pierce notation for the Bohlen-Pierce tenor clarinet, I need a U clef, which is not displayed here. It can be comfortably used by viola players too, as well. We found out. So here I transcribed some bars of Georg Heidu's piece Beyond the Horizon. I just see, I've looked at these pictures many times, but I just see I made the wrong choice. It doesn't show the equivalent of the first example that you saw. This is another bit of it, but maybe it doesn't matter, because it's easy to rehearse. We all have the same clef, and we can easily find out where we have the same pitches or what intervals we are playing in. So how's the project coming? By now there are about 35 compositions for Bohlen-Pierce clarinets and some other instruments. Todd Harrop has some compositions for BP clarinet now. Nicola Visali has a piece for BP clarinet and B-flat clarinet. Jim Dalton, who cannot be here today, has a piece for BP clarinet and traditional marimba, just to name a few. And the next project is we're going to record the BP pieces by the Hamburg composers and bring it out as an album. Georg would like to bring it out on vinyl as well, so if there are vinyl lovers amongst you, you can buy a BP LP next year. And I'd like to ask you for one favor, and that's buy this book. It's awesome. It has articles about many aspects of microtonality, and it has 2 chapters about Bohlen-Pierce. One chapter by Todd Harrop, and one chapter by Georg Heidu, Konstantin Mandatu, and me about the scale, about scale theory, about notation, and about BP instruments. International shipping is offered at the Positionen web shop.
That's in German and in English, right?
Yeah. I beg your pardon?
German and English.
Yeah. Yes, the part of the texts are in German and part are in English, so it's a bilingual book. So you get to learn some German when you read it. That's only fair because I learned some Spanish this weekend. So there are some minutes left. I can play a small improvisation for you and maybe a BP recording just for fun.
Sorry, yeah. We have 2 minutes for the questions, if it's okay. I was so fascinated, I lost the sense of time.
Okay, so, but that's 5 minutes to go for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, we have a lot of questions here. So who wants to be the first one? Yes, Marco?
I'm not sure if you told this, I was some minutes late due to the closed door, but why did they choose exactly these intervals?
Why the scale has exactly these intervals?
Yes.
That's connected to the harmonies. The main triad is 3-5-7, and then there are several ways to get to that scale. For instance, if you use the way that the Western tradition scale is built up, if you stack fifths, you get the C major scale or chromatic scale later. And for the Bohlen-Pierce scale, if you stack the frame interval of the 3-5-7 triad, which is kind of a tenth, then you would fill up the gaps between the pitches until you have the Bohlen-Pierce scale. That's one way to get there.
Okay.
And he was aware of the Sonido 13? He was aware of the Mexican developments of other scales?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah.
He didn't have a real, a very deep musical knowledge. He was just asking a very naive question. At the time, he was in contact with the composition class at the Hamburger Musikhochschule, and he did recordings of their concerts for free. That's why they liked him. And as somebody who has no idea, he was able to ask this very naive question, like, why do you always have the octave? And when he asked that question, people didn't understand his question. They said, well, but it's the way it is. There is no other way to do it. Or, ask my colleague, he knows. So he didn't get an answer. He had to find it himself. Yeah.
Any more questions, please, Johannes?
Ivan Wisniewski used the words intrachromatic and ultrachromatic. Ultrachromatic means microtonal. In this way, the Bohlen-Pierce scale has steps with 146 cents. So it will be macrotonal.
It is macrotonal, actually, yes. Bohlen also suggested some other divisions of the 12th, like 11 or 12, and it can be found in all research papers by him, but this one, the 1383, was most successful. And I think in the next lecture we are going to hear about the 833 cent scale as well.
And any more questions?
Yes,
Christian, right?
Yes.
It's very tough here.
So is there? Every clarinet comes from the same manufacturer, isn't it?
By now, Stephen Fox seems to be the only one to make Bohlen-Pierce clarinets. Yeah, that may be because it's just a very, very small part of his business, and it requires a lot of passion. And other clarinet makers maybe wouldn't take it.
And has then, in that case, there should also be a similarity for them. I saw you play also multiphonics. Mm-hmm. Is there should be for the clarinets, then it should be somehow the same. Is there somebody who already researched the multiphonics or something?
Yes, so the acoustic preconditions in the Bohlen-Pierce clarinet are just the same as in a normal clarinet. So everything that works on a normal clarinet works here too. Some things are just a little bit different because the tone holes have different positions. And I have found and analyzed a lot of musicians on both the BP soprano clarinet, which is this one, and the bigger tenor clarinet. You will find it all in my dissertation when it comes out.
And you mentioned you have 2 extra keys. Are
Yes.
there any other variations? Or
variations from the very first instruments that, I don't know where you probably cannot see here, the open tone holes have small chimneys, that means they have plateaus, they are a little bit higher than the rest of the clarinet. The very first instruments didn't have it. They had flat holes, like a recorder, but this turned out to be more comfortable to play, especially since the tone holes are wider than on a normal clarinet, and this one here used to be quite far away and much bigger than the other ones, and I often had trouble to cover this finger hole.
Yes.
So in later developments he changed that. He added the chimney so he was able to make the bore in an angle. So the tone hole, this tone hole for instance, in the instrument it's here, but it goes through an angle so it comes out angle, so it comes out here. It should be here, and this further away, which is uncomfortable. This is better.
But actually I meant that this has 2 extra keys from the standard clarinet from Mr. Fox. And are there any other models that people ask in with other variations? Are you aware of them?
As far as I know, not.
Okay.
Oh, there is the one variation that is existent is somebody asked for a clarinet from pearwood. This one is from Delrin, which is an industrial plastic, a very durable material with good acoustic characteristics, and Stephen can also make it in pearwood or any other wood that you ask him to use.
And any more questions? Otherwise, if you allow me one more question, because with the notation, in the history of guitar or string instruments, we have tablature. I don't know if you went through tablature. I mean, it would be very difficult to come to a conclusion. I would think about it myself as a composer. And if you went maybe through these alternative notations or primitive notations, maybe there was a way to connect, instead of the strings, the positions, if you can connect it to the keys. I don't know if you were...
Yes, I've looked through a tablature notation for guitar and gamelan orchestra. The question that I'm trying to solve in this notation is that I want a universal notation which can be read by other instrumentalists as well. And a tablature is always instrument specific. So an instrument specific can be my clarinet fingering notation, which is most comfortable for me as a classical clarinetist. And a tablature would not solve the problem that we have in rehearsals, that we need a score that displays the sounding pitches.
And so the different clarinets, there's no transposing like in the traditional instruments. So everyone has a notation. And what happens when a conductor is not familiar? I mean, in this opera of what's his name? This opera of Haidu, I mean, he probably had a conductor who was not aware of his notation. So how could you solve this problem?
This notation is still quite new. We developed it in the last few years. In 1993, there was no BP notation, and Georg used an eighth tone approximation in his notation.
Okay, so like a Cia for the conductor?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was only one song which in that whole opera, so a small part.
Yes, because otherwise conductors, I mean, because of my experiences with the microtonal compositions and notation.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julio Marco. We have in Spain two last names that we don't use normally, only in legal documents. My second last name is Franco, but if I say Julio Marco Franco, everybody calls me Mr. Franco. And I was born in the same city of the dictator, so I never ever use Franco. I always use Julio Marco. In my legal documents is the name I have. I was born in Ferrol, in the same city as the general, in 1951, so I am now 66 years old. I was working in music since I was age 4, but when I was 17 I studied music and classical guitar. I had to quit because in those days it was not so easy in Spain to live with music. Social conditions were different, and I always was very interested in medicine, so I went to medicine and I became a doctor, a medical doctor. Later I went to Mallorca with the specialty of nephrology, and I went to the University of Barcelona for a PhD. I became professor of medicine and also studied economy, and a long story. I have 17 titles, so I'm not going to tell them all because I will spend my whole time with that. But 5 years ago I had to quit because I had problems from my activities in the hospital, and I've been also in the diplomatic body. For the first time I was alone at home and without anything to do. That was very strange because I was always working and studying all night. So I decided to go to the music again. It was also under recommendation of my therapist, who was what is called in Bilbao, in the north of Spain, a thin man, like 150 kilos, very friend of mine. I said, you have to use your fingers. So I decided to go back to music. I decided to study again. I took my theory in the ABSL in United Kingdom, and then I took the performance in London College, and I went for the master at the University of La Rioja, and now I'm for my second PhD in Portugal, in music, in composition. Basically I work in composition, but I still play guitar, and I'm going to have an exam for conducting. But basically what I do now, all day, but is working on those. I'm going to present this presentation. The name is 34 tone volume scale notation. A microtone is beautiful. I think that everyone here probably agrees with that. Long life for the microphone. I don't know if microtone is going to last, but I know for sure that our music, the classical music, has real problems. And it's not only a headline of the newspaper, it's dead. For me also it's very important this part here. Even with every seat filled, it's a problem, economic problem for orchestras. So I think that this is really a problem. It's really a problem. So I decided to see if I could do something, and I want to support first this idea that the art music is in problem. If we see here, this is Australia from the last decade. This classical music, this is in thousands, so this is 1.5 million, a little bit over, is almost double of visiting archives. Only. People is interested in visiting archives and the double in classical music, compared with cinemas, for example, or even with museums or schools. So this is really a very astonishing number, right? This is a population for that time, for 22 million with 70.3 over 50 years. Okay, now if you see here that the same statistics, and this is by ages. So it's not easy to understand, to deduce, to get these numbers. But I have this up for you with the population, and you find out with these numbers here that they represent over 63% of the people who is over 45 years. And it's a study in the United Kingdom where they cut it to 10 years time, and the age was 10 years older people, so we're the same people, assistant to the art music, to the program. These statistics came from Spain, and it's the same in France and many other places. So this is a problem, representing a total of less than 9%. Now, in order to what is retains, is 5.5. And classical is in decline. Every genre is in decline because of the digital growth. But if you see the decline is the second after growth in percentage, considering the low numbers that we are coming. So this is really poor. If you see here, that's global. It's not USA. It's global from the International Federation. The decline of physical record that everybody knows, the increase in digital. And very interesting here, these two images. This is in this streaming was 32%, with permanent downloads still were heading. But the last one, what? Something goes wrong. No, opposite. This last one, streaming is first, and the growth in revenues is impressive. Right? So we can say maybe it's because people in classical music is using more digital now, but it's not true. But if you see these are the percentages. Classical is only using streams in 21%. So we cannot say that this decline in the physical records is due to increase in digital in this case. It's not. And if you see here, this is from Spain, classic music is very low in the list, right? Close to new, not flamenco, to new flamenco. So what, in my opinion, why is that? The reason is that classic music, art music, has been in a age of about 500 years. The only major change has been that the economy coming from supporting sponsors coming from the elite has been replaced by the bourgeoisie with the people. The church is maybe not so important in terms of payments, but inside the cage the things are the same. The world temperature tone scale, traditional score writing, conventional instrument, saxophone is not orchestra. Classical guitar is not orchestra. Euphonium is not. And the formal fixed interpretation, people interpreting, they are performing, sitting in the same way for 500. So, in my opinion, what is coming to stay? We already have some examples about that. Performance is changing and has to be more, even more. There are some changes, like for example, Patricia Kopatiskaya, she plays violin in fair 3 or with a scale, different performance. Right? Or you have done a dress for piano, playing very, very sexy. Multimedia is growing. The digital world, I'm not talking only about the acoustic music that we have here, two fathers of the acoustic music. I'm talking about different things, like, for example, ubiquitous music, Green Canopy, which is a project from Brazil that combines recycled materials with a project in defense of the forest, with computers, interaction, human computerization, and many other things together to create something which is different, which is multi-artistic, and which is ecologic. Things like that. The audience is very important, because when you ask young people who maybe go for the first time to a classical concert and say, "What do you think?" They say, "I have no option. When I am at home, I can say I like it, or I can change the channel, or I can cut the music. I have to sit and wait. Nothing. No one asks me about it." And children and young people want to participate, want to have the audience voice, and that's very important. And also alternative escapes. This point, I don't think I don't need to speak a lot about this here, because I think everybody has a clear idea that new scales are needed. So, but that more enough has not to go to, I want to do something in my second PhD that will have pleasantness for the majority of people, not for a very highly educated people like, for example, you. I want to make something in my compositions that people will say, "Well, I like it." Normally. So I had to review what is needed, what the science tell us about those things that make people say, "Oh, this is nice." And then I found these results in the literature. Octave is important to be maintained. Harmonics, in particular even harmonics. Maintenance of the intervals and the final solution, because as you know, a number of fifths never gets to another of things. So those are problems that in European, now I'm moving in the European music. I'm not going to do things out of these constraints, right? Voluntarily, I limit in my thesis the work to this work. Now, the golden radio, which is the second part of my have a look at the time. The golden radio is a radio, as the name indicates, and it's a radio that can be explained. It's a radio you have online. You can find a point here that fulfills the condition that the total line, A plus B, divided by the longest side is equal to the longest divided by the short, the less. It's only one point that fulfills this condition, and you can, this can be transformed into a second degree equation that we all studied when we were about 13 years old. Probably we will forget about that now. And you have two solutions, which funny enough, they have the same decimals. So for us in art, although this is mathematically, this should be called tau, and this should be called phi, but as the proportions, artistic proportions are the same, we normally use instinctively. It's not mathematically correct, but it is practical. Now, example for the golden radio, that by the way has the name, a very recent name, it was called different ways in the ages. It was usually, the name Phi is Albert Phidias. Phidias was the architect, one of the architects of the Parthenon, and who sculpted the part of it. And the number is using the Pythagorean school for the Pentagon. It was studied by Luca Bartolomeo, who called the Divina Proporzione, in a book that has been illustrated by Leonardo da Vinci. It was calculated with quite accuracy by Michel Weslin. It was also studied by Kepler in the planet model. But the name came from Martin Ohm very recently. The golden radio became very famous with the film with Tom Hanks, the Da Vinci Code. And it's closely related to the Fibonacci sequence, which is, as you know, the sum. Every number is the sum, the addition of the two preceding numbers. So you have to add 3 to 5 to make 8, and so on. And if you divide the number by the previous number, you get a number, a line, same quotient, the same number, which they call them later. So, and it has been used in many, this is Julio man with these proportions, you see the leg. In nature, it's existing in animals, in hurricanes, in galaxies, in vegetables, growth, in quasi-minerals, in DNA, which has the same proportion, in architecture, in East and in West countries, in prehistorical constructions, it is in the United Nations, Stupa, Australia, Paris, in ceramic paintings, sculpture, religion, and even in prehistoric remains that are about 40,000 years old, or in Altamira paintings in the north of Spain, which are almost 14,000 years. So it seems that this number has an attraction, right, for many reasons. It's also found in Namibia in a sequence of Sanskrit poetry, like the Fibonacci sequence. Now, it's also found in many logos, for example, Apple. Great car had the size proportion of the golden plate. Maybe that's why they have golden car. So it's a number that it seems to exist in many surroundings, in many subjects, and I thought it was interesting to see if I could integrate that number in music. So then I studied how it has been integrated, and I found obviously that you can integrate the number in intervals, for example, the sequence. And I'm going to show you some of the That's the first one. It seems that the sound. But do you hear that? Yeah. Okay. Then we have ABC, for example. That's sequence is different. But no. And it has been also used for rock music. Okay, then we have this scale that has been done by adding the phi number. But the problem of this scale is that do not contain all these elements that I have mentioned before. So it sounds for normal. No, this is still the same. For some reason it's not. Maybe we need to let them go on. Okay, let's see what that is. No. Doesn't want to. Okay, I will do it in different ways. The other one is in the loop. I don't know how to stop that because here is not.
Can I help you?
No, it's not.
Si lo clican otra vez,
Vamos a salir. That's the only way. Don't touch anything for a moment. Okay, next. Okay. Then we have the one scale. I don't need to talk a lot about this because my preceding speaker has a lot. It was done by two microwave engineers. Practically true, but it was an old man, Keston Prohem, that also participated in this scale that has disappeared. The name disappeared from the list. The composition, everything has been told about the even harmonics, the 13 steps, everything. Only thing that has not been said is that it follows the Fibonacci sequence. So that's why it's here in my list, because it's a part of the golden ratio scales that I have reviewed. But for all my restrictions that I mentioned that I want to keep with the even harmonics within the octave, etc., I was not prone to compose with this scale, although I studied the scale among the other possibilities. Now, going to the 34-tone scale, that was something that they did scientifics like a little bit the same as the 833. They make it and forgot about that. They make it. This was a project between Bologna Unit of Research and University of Balearic Islands, and they want to decide something including the golden ratio, maximizing all harmonics, having the octave, everything on it. They did it and forgot about that. And it keeps the octave, the fifth is exact, the harmonics are maximized, and it is mathematical built basically in all the Pythagorean intervals. So for me, it sounded interesting, and I found that by chance because I was studying that. I'm a member of Rotary Club, and I was in a dinner with someone, and I was talking. I found something done in Italy, and the man sitting on my side said, "I was one of them before," and he explained a little bit. He was the Spanish participant. This one. So I went to the university to talk to him, and I obtained the possibility of visiting Italy that I'm going to do in a week or so, to spend some time there and learning more about how they build it. It seems for me that in theory it has some of the elements that I'm happy with. So my project for my second PhD is music composition with this 34-tone scale. And the problem again was for writing, as previously has been mentioned, in those scales. And I saw this because I want to find some score writing that made possible to write with any notation program, like Finale or Sibelius or whatever. That one condition. And the second condition, the same for all the instruments. So not to have, for example, mentioned before for the guitar. That were two ideas. So I organized, this is the scale, and this is the well tempered with the differences. And so I used the tremolo sign, because normally now it's not very much. You can just, in the text, add TR over the space, and And I use this. So for the three C's that we have before the C sharp, C1, C1, just with I will make it sound for you. Okay, and here is a short sample just for you. That's the topic. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll do your questions if you want in the 8 minutes time.
We have more than 5 minutes for the questions, so please feel free. Jaime?
Is it important, and do you distinguish, for example, the use of mathematical proportions in the thoughts of the production or in what you see in it? This is to say, very often we find a lot of studies where you find proportions, Fibonacci, and so many things in art or in whatever, that we don't really have any evidence that this is a part of the artistic thought. Is that important to you? How do you relate to these things?
If I understood well, you mean what are the scientific bases for that?
No, that's not what I mean.
I think, in my opinion, I think I mentioned, in my opinion, this scale has all the basis because it keeps with the intervals. It has the octave. It has all the harmonics, pairs, even and odds. So in theory, and it includes the golden ratio. So in theory, this has to work. In theory. Now,
I think he means something completely different.
Oh, I
think let's take maybe a picture, so we go a little bit away of music, and sometimes probably an artist is just intuitive in the use of golden.
I'm a scientist also. I'm not also only an artist.
Exactly. That's my question. As a scientist that you are, how do you see these things? I mean, are you interested in seeing the production thought and trying to understand how something will be produced, or are you more interested in seeing what you see in there?
No, I am a scientist, but I'm also a musician. And what I wanted is not to start from zero. I wanted to use all the scientific evidence for my artistic process. So you can start making a wheel again, but if you have a wheel, don't wait time to make a wheel. And I spent some time finding the scientific basis for pleasantness in Western or European and Europeanized societies, which is my focus. And I found all this evidence, and now I'm going to the artistic process using the new scale, and I will spend now the next months and year making a composition, and I have an idea that my first artistic work will be called The Asian Garden. It's just an artistic performance, including theater, 3 cameras projecting, sound, lights, dancing, and microtones. So that is my first project. But this is out of the science. That is an artistic project. But first I needed to know how to write the music. That was my first month was thinking how to, because now you will hear that because it's written in the notation program. But if you had no notation, you could not hear it. In fact, the authors never hear. I can produce now a sound with any timbre, And you want a piano, you get piano, and you want a violin, you get a violin. Because with the notation you can change the instrument. So now I can produce any music with these microtones, any kind of instrument. That was my preceding time. I cannot start going to the artistic period without my tools before, right?
Another question? Svetlana.
Svetlana, yes. My question is, why exactly 34? Because the golden ratio can be used in maybe 12, maybe 18, maybe 24. Why exactly 34?
Well, I didn't make the scale. The scale was already built. But I found the scale, and I studied the scale, and I discovered that the scale may have possibilities. But I was not the builder of the scale. And I think there are some reasons why, because of the way it is built, which is irrational numbers, but this will be probably a mathematical physical process which is out of the music. And that is, I want to go in depth in the next week. I will go to Bologna to know more about how they built it, but I have read the document, the original document, and it's quite a physical mathematical process. I have some images, but I don't think that it's really a physical mathematical composition with the square of the number every time adding, and you get to that. But the 34 is one octave, so the 34 are within one octave. That's important. And the fifth sharp is the same frequency as the welter. And obviously the tonal frequency is the same. So the frequencies are the same. And it's a coincidence, so there's no difference in the tonal and in the fifth plus frequency. The same frequency. Right?
I mean, and also because it's between, I mean, were you aware, when you made this decision, were you aware of the 31 divisions, which is very popular, or even the 36 equal divisions of the scales? Why did you decide to use this scale, 34 divisions? Because
for me this scale has the golden ratio, it has all the harmonics, maximization of harmonics. It has all Pythagorean intervals. So I thought, well, this sounds well for my restriction of making something pleasant for the majority of the European culture people. Because this feeling, and I didn't go I have another presentation for that, but this feeling of tonality and everything, there are two theories. One is that it is evolutional, and is from our old prehistoric ancestors, and the other one is that is acquired. If it's acquired probably even before birth. So the fetus start listening, because there are studies about breathing children, up to 4 years old, and they can distinguish dissonance from consonance in Europe. So that's why for me, with this frame restriction of making music for European and Europeanized societies, for me to keep all these elements was important. I don't want to say that maybe with other frame, if you want to make music close to Asia or India, then you probably have to forget about even a stave. They don't have a stave, they have a different way of doing music. But I'm restricted to this making music for our culture frame with stave, with notation, with maximization of harmonics, with intervals, with tonality, and with a golden ratio. So that's why I think this is a cocktail. Let's see if it works. Next year, maybe you invite me, I will present some composition.
Yeah, so I mean, these ideas, they look at the very early stage. Do you have any plans? How? Because on the computer, if you're going to continue just producing music on computer, so you can...
No, my idea is because...
How are you going to import this to the...
There is a problem, as you see, for example, for keyboards, because if you tune a keyboard, then a piano comes to more or less to a guitar. The scale is the same.
Yeah, but Julian Carrillo has 97.
Yes, so you need several keyboards and things like that. But for the moment, I don't want to involve industry in making new instruments or tuning, because I tune with a keyboard, but was not very stable. Well, that's a long process about. But basically, now I'm going to do music that you can do with instruments, like, for example, a violin that you can adapt, or voice. With the voice you can sing. Wind instruments.
As a composer, I can tell you it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I know. It is even harder to try to build new instruments at the beginning. So I already have made some tests on that, and it sounds that at least part of my music will be a part of my composition will be in live. With live, I mean, not electronically, but with instruments. Yeah. This project, if I can finish the project, the Asian Garden will be done with real instruments. Yeah. Maybe a part, no, but basically with that will show in the garden. I mean, I have written on the screen for that.
Yeah, we wish. Any more questions, please?
Just more than a question.
Sí,
in the shadow.
Yeah, a suggestion, because you were saying that you were not interested now in using instruments that are not capable of producing these pitches.
Well, I will love to use an instrument, but I don't think that the industry will be involved now at this very early beginning in building something that.
No, I mean, more than a question, I wanted to make a suggestion, because I've been actually dealing with many people in the industry of making instruments. And for instance, one of the problems now in the market is that the sales of music instruments, etc., are going down. Okay, because people is losing interest in music, in learning music, not in a big way, but for instance, in the market of selling instruments, I mean...
Suppose the same going down that is playing...
But in the market of selling instruments, there is like even a big debt of some companies, like big companies. So actually, for instance, last week I was talking to somebody in the United States about that. And one of the ideas we were talking about was this, that we need to create also other music. We need necessities. Because it was always like that. We came out with an instrument, and then the music evolved, and we needed a better instrument with other qualities. So anyway, just my suggestion would be that to not wait too much until you have a lot of things to start working along with instrument makers.
I will love it. If there is any connection that I could use, I will use it for sure. And I have some information also about keyboards that are able to. I got some mails about that, that you can adapt, because, for example, to make a fifth here is impossible because it's very far. So you have to readapt the key system as to make it possible to play different.
Because also, I mean, we have to remember that music is made by everybody, by the listener, by the artist, by the instrument maker, by so.
Well, thank you.
That's just my suggestion.
Any other question? David? Sorry, it's very dark. I need to focus.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Part question, part comment is related to the first part of your presentation. You talked about the syncing
of art music,
concert music, and classical music scene and stuff like that, which is perfectly true. Specifically, as you said in the USA, I know for a fact that Met Opera is struggling right now with financial problems and a lot of different things. That's perfectly true. But the solution to that is, if we are learning one thing, is that the solution to kind of confront the commercialization of the art music is not through new scales and new instruments and electroacoustic innovations and things like that. If you see which composers are the most successful in Europe and in the US, let's think about Germany, for example. In Germany, Wolfgang, for example, is probably the most commercial composer, and what he does is kind of post-Alban-Bergian, post-romantic structure again and again and again, and uses this beat on it. It's very, or in, I don't know, other places, Thomas Addis, for example, composers like that. If we learn something, is that what we do here, interests in new scales, new tone systems, intonational practices, or electronic devices, acoustic music, that always leaves kind of at the side, at the corner, in its own scope, with its own audience. But it's not a way to confront the commercialization of the music or the sinking reception of the art music. It usually doesn't go anywhere. To think about all these composers in the 20th century and now that done really interesting. Let's think about here, Salzburg, France, Fischer, of course, were fantastic composers. We love their music. But did they find a place in the world of commercial art music, or did they change anything in the world of commercial art music? Not really. Because people are not interested. People are afraid to kind of go beyond their safe zone of Schumann and Beethoven and Wagner. People are kind of afraid to confront.
I don't want to kill Schumann and I don't want to kill Beethoven. I mean, it's fine to, it will be a room for that, obviously. It will be a room for conventional. This is not against the other thing. This is in addition to. And this is something that is the same as I heard about. No, you cannot do a multi-artistic performance because you will not be in command, because the music must be in command. Why the music must be in command? We have another colonialist position now, like we have in Western countries. I don't have any blame to sit with another one and share the artistic process, and in equal friendship. Not the music must be the first and the second, I don't believe in that. I think that classical music, of course, has a room for new or standard developments, and I hope it will remain those standards, but with standard grace and everything, why not? It is a tradition and something that has to be kept. But this is something in addition to. It's a new way that maybe will create, that is my hope, create the interest, especially in young generations, that now see that a little bit far. And because if we continue with the aging of the population, then we will be playing for the senior houses where people is resident there. So we need something to break that. I mean, this is my opinion. I'm not in possession of the truth, obviously. It is only an opinion. But I believe that this may have a contribution, may provide a contribution to that. In addition to other things, performances, changes, and many other things, multimedia. My last composition in normal scale, 12 scale, I put photos on the screen. All the composition was with photos. I made a symphonic work in memory of the Paris attacks, and it was a symphonic work with 4 movements, standard, and with photos. And you can play, but I say...
I'm really sorry.
Okay, we are out of time. Thank you.
But there's interesting topics about marketing, about what's happening today. I mean, all the changes that are happening in art. I'd like to invite you to this performance of Mrs. Järvi tonight. Okay. So, and we really hope that maybe this 34 scale contributes to the consume of music, of classical music, and we would like, thank you very much, Julio, for your presentation.
Okay, good morning. I am Elisa Järvi from Finland, from the Sibelius Academy. I'm a pianist and also interested in contemporary music and old keyboard instruments. I have my background also in fortepiano playing. So today I'm talking about quarter-tone piano building projects in Finland. I think we could start with a short music example. As some of you might have recognized, this piece was composed by Ivan Wisniewski in the 1930s. And the piece is entitled Prelude for a Quarter-Tone Piano, or Prelude in Quarter-Tone System. And this is what the original instrument looked like. It was constructed by August First Piano Company in Germany nearly 100 years ago in the 1920s. This early quarter-tone piano had 3 keyboards. The bottom and the top keyboards were tuned just like the normal piano. And with the octave divided into 12 pitches. And the middle keyboard was tuned like a traditional piano, but a quarter tone higher. Ivan Wisniewski immigrated from Russia to France, and together with his Czech colleague Alva Haba, further refined the keyboard for the quarter tone piano. In Wisniewski archives at the Paul-Sacher Stiftung in Basel, some of the sketches are on display, complete with precise dimensions, as you see here on the left side. The Grotrian-Steinbeck Piano Company in Germany was the first company that planned to produce the new version of the instrument, and they even advertised it. The instrument looked like this, like 2 grand pianos stuck together. So this is a picture that I found in the archives, and I copied that by hand. It was Werbeblatt from commercial brochure by Grotrian-Steinbeck. And there was a text, it was written, die 176 Tasten bestehende Klaviatur der Spieleinrichtung ist nur 6 cm breiter als die normale. Zwischen den weißen Elfenbein-Untertasten und der schwarzen Ebenholz-Obertasten ist je eine rotbraune Viertelton-Taste gelagert. So probably they were speaking about red-brown keys. So probably they referred to this Wisniewski model, and maybe the piano was to be like reddish or red-brown. But unfortunately, this initiative never came to fruition. And finally, it was the first company that built the first quarter-tone piano with a quarter-tone keyboard cooperation with Haba. And the sample instrument was sent to Wisniewski, who was at the time in Paris. I found in the internet a nice video by Steve Horn, who is playing this instrument. I think he's in the Prague Music Museum, so there are still a couple of instruments left. Unfortunately, out of tune. For some reason, although several composers of the time showed interest in producing works for this instrument, only a couple of quarter-tone pianos by First were constructed. As we heard yesterday, for instance, the Mexican composer Julian Carrillo experimented by tuning pianos to different scales using various regular intervals. And he, in 1940, he patented his 15 different metamorphoso pianos, and he cooperated with the Zauter Piano Company. Depending on the model, the pianos were tuned using scales divided into pitches ranging from whole tones to 16th tones. On this 16th tone piano, constructed by Sauter, the distance between the lowest and the highest notes is exactly 1 octave. German-born American pianist composer Hans Barth also experimented with quarter-tone piano, and I was happy to find also in internet this video from 1930, thanks to University of South Carolina and the video archives. Just a moment, we can go to this syntax actually.
And again, the quarter tone piano. As you see, this scale lends itself to new musical expression. I shall play a few messages from the Shadows of the Cathedral, our own composition.
The American composer pianist Wilfred Cooper also began to experiment with music composed for two different pianos in the 1920s. One piano was tuned a quarter tone higher than the second, and both played simultaneously. Both Haber and Wisniewski continued to write for the quarter tone piano, but also, probably for practical reasons, they produced quarter tone compositions for performance on two pianos. Later on, as microtones became a more familiar part of many Western classical composers' toolbox, the quarter-tone piano was utilized in more diverse ways. As mentioned yesterday, Jos Ives, John Corigliano, and Friedrich Haas produced compositions for quarter-tone piano duo or for two pianos tuned one quarter-tone apart. Okay, but now to the new quarter-tone piano. The most recent quarter-tone piano recently developed in Finland is an example of an approach which meets the needs of contemporary quarter-tone musicians and composers. The ability to produce quarter-tones on a full-range keyboard. The aim of our work group was to develop an acoustic quarter-tone instrument which takes pianistic, ergonomic, and compositional needs into account. Together with Finnish composer Sampo Haapamäki, who already has written several quarter-tone compositions for orchestra, for instance, we sought to develop a keyboard with a realistic piano touch that enables the performer to play both quarter-tone scales and quarter-tone chords with one hand. The final instrument is an extended version of the traditional piano, consisting of a new quarter-tone keyboard connected to two disc-clavier pianos. And those pianos are tuned one quarter-tone apart. And in this way, unfortunately, there will be time delay of approximately 200 or even more milliseconds, although the sound is now produced acoustically. There is also another option. The keyboard can be attached to a computer and speakers by using computer's internal sound system, and this option has no delay. This is how the keyboard looks inside. There's optical sensor strips, and which are reacting to the velocity and to the volume. And this is an unimportant fact, but those optical sensors can be extremely sensitive if you are on stage and there is bright light, and they can almost work by the So there is also a telemeter. Okay, a close look at the keyboard. Playing a quarter-tone instrument brings some new challenges to the performer. One has to master new notations and symbols, and also personally I think the biggest challenge here is the time delay, especially when performing chamber music. Here you can see the acoustic version of the piano. So there is a keyboard, and then there are two disc-clavier pianos. The white one is tuned one quarter-tone down, actually. Okay, now you will see pentatonic scale and overtone scale. There is the time delay. So this is how the keyboard looks like. Personally, I find the word sharp darker than the word flat. So that's why we decided to color the new grey keys so that the darker brown keys are tuned one quarter-tone sharp, and the light grey keys are the quarter-tone flat keys. And I think little by little I'm becoming used to the fact that when I see the quarter-tone sharp sign, I immediately start to think about the dark gray key. But it takes some time, and at the moment when I'm practicing, I try to keep my fingers on the keyboard and my eyes on music, and just to without looking too much to my hands. Here I will also, a couple of words about the names of the quarter tones. It would be nice to know actually if you have which kind of words you are using nowadays in German, because in Finland we have the German system with C, D, E, F, G, A, H, like you say here, H, and we're not in this B and B flat system. And the Finnish composer Sampo Haapamäki is trying to establish the system, calling those quarter tone sharps with US ending and quarter tone flats with OS. It's probably easier to remember if you think U for up and O for down. Like DOS is down, D down, and DOS is the up. And I think it's quite practical instead of saying always quarter tone up and quarter tone down or like that. Well, as a pianist, it's always good to practice scales. So here is one demonstration. I'm practicing C 3/4 step scale with both hands together. And here is the chromatic scale and some chords. So, as you maybe saw, for the quarter tone scale, the most rapid fingering is to play with 1, 2, 3, 4. As you normally, as all the pianists know, that it's 1, 3, 1, 3 with white and black keys, but with 1, 2, 3, 4 it goes quite smoothly. Also, it's possible to mention, because today people have spoke about different kind of tunings. There are other possibilities to tune the piano in a different way. If you like to have, let's say, you have now 31 keys within one octave. So actually, it's possible to tune that differently when you have the computer option. Okay. I was happy to discover that the old quarter tone piano music composed by Wisniewski is also playable on our new keyboard, as you heard at the beginning of my presentation. But I hope that in the future there will be more quarter tone piano music written by contemporary composers. There are at the moment some Finnish composers working at a task. But anyway, I hope that the instrument will inspire composers to explore new possibilities, to challenge both future performers and listeners. Due to weight of the keyboard and the luggage limitations of air travel, it was not possible to bring the instrument to show you today, and it's more practical to demonstrate That's on a video example. At the end now, I would like to play two short examples by pieces written for quarter-tone ensemble or microtonal ensemble that we have founded in Finland. The ensemble is called Mikrotöne, and we had a nice workshop almost 2 years ago with 7 composers from 7 different countries. And this example is by Takuta Fukuda, Constellation.
Eli is also in the ensemble, no? Veli, the accordion player?
Sorry? Veli, yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. So we have, in this ensemble, we have quarter-tone accordion and quarter-tone flute. And in the next piece, you will also see quarter-tone guitar. Is a composition by Philippine-born composer Felix Makahis, and here you will hear the piano playing or imitating some traditional Philippine bells. Recording of our concert last October on this website of University of the Arts, Helsinki. Okay, thank you.
So we have, I think we have plenty of time for questions before we go to the lunch break. So please, first question, Nora.
Yeah. I have a question about the keyboard layout.
Yeah.
It's a very intelligent layout, so you have the white keys on the bottom and the grey up quarter tones and half tones. Can I see that?
The grey ones are the keyboard is like a normal keyboard, but it's quarter tone higher. It's tuned in that way. So they are in between. The white keys are kind of cut. You can think that they're cut or doubled.
Okay. And
they are double.
They are double.
It's double. It's the same.
So you can play above too.
Sorry?
You can play the line with the black keys to the white keys in one line.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the top one has all the traditional black keys.
That's just a normal.
Yeah. The white keys in between, what do they do?
So the upper layer is just like the traditional piano. So all the colors that are black, it's like black normal piano keys, and whites are like normal white piano keys. So we try to keep the layout as traditional as possible, so that it's easy to understand that if you have pianistic background, you easily see what key is what. But unlike in first piano, where you also have those two keyboards, we try to make it possible to go smoothly from the quarter tones to the normal ones.
So for fingering.
For fingering, yes, because as you saw in, well, let's say the American, the Spartan example, he has to jump between those two keyboards, and in contemporary music, nobody is writing in that way, keeping separately those 12-tone groups of pitches.
Yeah, anyway, in many other instruments you have several possibilities to obtain the same notes, so this is a very good idea, actually.
Yeah, we were just doubling the white one, so that it's mostly for the thumb. It's easier to play chords so that the thumb is close to you. Right? Yeah. So you can reach almost any chord.
Julio also
Yes,
has
thank you. Do you know if it's possible to change the order? I mean, to change, not to follow two blacks, two whites, one black, etc. Is that possible to order a different organization of the keys or not?
I mean, the layout is fixed, but you can tune.
No, I'm talking about tuning. For the moment, tuning will come next. But
Yes.
for the moment, I'm talking about changing the place.
The place, which way? Sorry, I don't.
To say, for example, to include 3 whites instead of 2.
3 whites.
3 white keys, for example. To change, to order a piano with different arrangement.
Then you would have to start with a specific scale, and then probably...
And the second question is, when you do change tune, how many cents is the maximum that you can change for a key?
I mean, you can. We are using the Piano Tech program, so you can do anything. You can change you can have for the piano sound, or you can have different kind of piano sounds, but also you can have any tuning or change the order of the keys. It's just
even over 100 cents.
I think. Well, it depends on the. Well, it's.
Yes. The Piano Tech is a software, physical modeling software, so you can have any tune, any scale.
I don't know the range myself, but
of
course it's very, very open. I think anyone would have more than enough. I mean, for most of our specific needs, probably.
Yeah, and or if you asked about the option, acoustic option, having this keyboard as a controller for those 2 disc clave pianos, depends on how you can tune pianos. I mean, it depends on the tuner. You can ask almost what they like to do and can do. Yes.
And Nicola?
Yes, it's possible to connect 2 master keys to the disc clave, or only 1 master key.
Sorry, what is master key? The keyboard. The
keyboard master, I call master. It's possible instead to have 2 keyboards which control the 2 pianos, the display, or not?
I think so. Actually, we haven't tried, but probably it's possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know that in Michigan they developed the dual piano? It's like yours. There is a master tune. But the shape of the keyboard is like a normal piano. This master commands 3 pianos, 3 display pianos, so they can tune notes as they want. This project has an origin, the dual organ. In a normal organ, like the ecumenic organ, it's similar, but the difference is that you don't have 3 keyboards. You have only 1 keyboard, and on the keyboards there are 3 selectors. And you can tune, so it's easier to play chords. See, no. And so, in Michigan, they created this dual piano, 3 pianos, commanded by 1 master key. So that's why I'm curious to know if you can connect more than 1 master.
I think so. Well, it's almost this MIDI out system, so I think.
Another question? Geo? No. David, sorry.
So you said there were actually 31 keys.
Sorry?
You said there were actually 31 keys because the white keys are double.
They're double, but they have separate sensor strips.
So you can actually use 31 pitches.
Yes.
Oh, that is really cool. Yeah. And the latency is only when it's connected to the real piano.
Yes.
So you can latency-free go with MIDI.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Talk.
Has anyone decided to specialize in the old repertoire, Vishnu-Kasky, Hava, Carrillo, Hives, and maybe this would give a new perspective, being 100 years later, slightly different layout. I wonder if that would revitalize or refresh that repertoire, which kind of got buried in the late Romantic era as modernism took over and had no interest in repertoires.
Yeah.
And I wonder now if this is an opportunity to...
This is a possibility, yeah.
Is anyone doing that?
Well, I've played a little bit with Nagatsky by now, and so at least it seems to work on this keyboard as well.
And Christian?
As they are twice the same white keys, can they be also two different MIDI channels or MIDI banks, so that we can really use more than the double of 88s or even more? So the two different white keys, can they be also channeled to two different MIDI channels?
Yeah. I mean, they're all different. It looks like they are the same because our aim was to build a quarter-tone keyboard, but it has more possibilities. So each of the keys is independent with a MIDI.
And is it the keyboard, or is it completely transportable?
It is. Unfortunately, this model is pretty heavy. It's more than 100 kilograms. So we are. Any ideas to? Yeah, this is the second, the next step that has to be solved. Some limitations. But yeah, in Finland we have been traveling already.
And
just a quick question. So this particular piano was developed at Sibelius Academy?
It depends how you see it. I'm personally working at the Sibelius Academy, but this project was not under the university, but they were supporting partly the project, and they bought this instrument. So the prototype we first built, that was private.
Oh, okay. And now is Sibelius Academy like utilizing this new development? Like, are they offering classes in quarter-tone piano? Are they teaching it?
I don't know. It's now under discussion. Probably I have given some lectures and so on. The composer seems to be interested in that, but let's see what happens. Ideas are welcome. Yeah.
Is it very indecent to ask how much it costs?
Business?
Probably it would be best to ask the builder of this keyboard, but because there's at the moment only one prototype, and then there is this keyboard. This is owned by the Sibelius Academy. So I think it would be something about 20 or 30,000 euros, but
not just too much.
Yeah, to have an idea, something like that.
Any more questions? Yes?
How you play with the sensors? You said you have two sensors separately on two whiteboard?
That's actually 3 sensor strips.
It's granular?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Can you talk louder, please?
I would like to know how the sensors function.
The sensors function. It's a piano scan system. It's like, if you know, the silent pianos by Yamaha, for instance, or...
We cannot hear you very well up here. Maybe you can explain.
Okay, I'll go back. So if you were asking about the sensors, how they work, so it's Piano Scan brand, and maybe if you saw the...
Yeah, we saw it, it's like moving your hand, but you don't need to touch the keyboard.
That was just a joke. I mean, normally you are playing the sensors are under the key, and they are optical sensors.
Yeah.
So it's reacting.
How you play combine these two function? You play the keyboard and you have the sensors at the same time.
You're asking how that happened?
Yeah.
When you make a joke?
Yes. It was before a concert. I was in a concert hall like this, but the lights were even brighter, and the light was coming from a strange angle. And for some reason, the optical sensor under the key saw the light, and it was reacting unpurposely. But
they were picking up like the shades that you were making.
Yeah, exactly.
You understand?
Yeah.
Because she had a keyboard, and there was a lot of light coming from different angles, so the sensors are optical, so they could see the light coming from the tabs. And when you pass the hand, you make a shadow on the tab, so the sensor is picking up something.
But for instance,
normally the sensor is work as MIDI keyboard.
Yes. Normally it's like that, and even in a bright sunlight, it doesn't work like that. I don't know why it happened. There's that.
So you had in the process of development, you found a piano builder to make the design, or did you do it on your own? Or in collaboration?
Yes. With composer Sampo Haapamäki, we decided to develop this kind. We were making drawings and sketches and like that, and we were working with paper and everything. But anyway, we first asked Finnish tuner Matti Kyllönen, who built a 1-octave prototype, and then after that, Otso Haapamäki, who is actually carpenter in English, not a piano builder, but working on models and this kind of. He built the whole keyboard. And then there was Libero Muredo, who is music technologist, who helped with finding the piano scan sensors and with a computer program to be attached.
So you had kind of a team to work on your own.
Sorry?
It was a bigger team to work on this project.
Yeah, because we were like two of us, and we were discussion with people from different professions.
Ivan.
Very practical. Now you have developed this keyboard, which is connected to actual pianos playing through the system.
Okay.
Are you, of course, think to develop also just one acoustic piano with all strings inside, right? This is the next step.
Yeah, that's my dream. If you have any ideas which piano builder I should contact, who would be interested nowadays, I would be very happy to hear. Probably there is some.
There's one very big here in Warsaw. I can give you the contact.
Wow.
They have
Okay.
They are open.
Okay, wonderful, okay. Yes.
And what about gospel? They are still
Yeah, I think we already asked them, but they even didn't have any drawings for the old model anymore, so...
Can you supply the violins? Well, I mean, I know the one in the museum that you showed in Prague, and you showed some other pictures. How many were there, do you know?
I think there were only 4 instruments, maybe. I understood that there were only like 2 uprights and 2 grand pianos at that time, and only 2 of them are left. I've heard that there's one in Prague and one in Cairo.
In Cairo. In Prague there is for sure, and although it says it's not allowed to play if the security is far.
Yeah.
Then he comes immediately.
Yes.
I just know.
I just know.
You are already know.
Any more questions, please?
Just curiosity, where in Cairo is your piano?
Sorry?
Where in Cairo?
It's music, a kind of music museum or music for museum for culture and music. Something like that. I can find you the name of the museum if you like, but it's in internet if you Google. Yeah.
Okay, and just a personal question of taste, because for me as a composer, sometimes it depends, of course, on the composition plan, but you also play quarter tones. Other pianos, probably one tuned at the normal one, tuned a quarter tone higher.
Yes.
And then having this model, and then if you were to write for 2 quarter tone pianos, what would you prefer actually? Because I'm sure there are some significant differences writing for 2 normal piano just with this difference. And having this one.
Yeah.
Or can you give me like a rough idea of your experiences?
Well, I played Corigliano, for instance, for 2 pianos, and it's the same aesthetic difference. Some connection to Habatai that for technical reasons you cannot play quarter tone scale very fast. So you have to. It's always like the normal world and the shadow, which is replying and keeping back that to a quarter tone, and not quarter, 12th tone parts separately. But on this piano, you are more flexible, and you have this equivalence between the pitches.
Yes. I mean, my taste is this one, but I'm always tempted also to separate into instruments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.